Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Banks here for All Things PlayStation. Today I'm talking about the Prey demo, which I believe became available on the PlayStation Network on the 27th of April. It is actually releasing on shelves on the 5th of May. Now I've wrapped my hands around it a little bit and I've had a little bit of a fiddle. And before I get into opinions here and thoughts and impressions, I should really say that I was actually a really big fan of the original Prey back in 2006, where you played as this badass Cherokee type character called Tommy, who had celestial powers from his ancestors, if you like. It came up with the idea of portals. It actually released before the game Portal, and I believe Portal exists solely because of the existence of Prey, but that is just my humble opinion there. And it had lots of other original ideas that we hadn't seen in shooters before. Things like gravity boots, walking upside down on ceilings, spending half a level thinking you're the right way round, when in actual fact you're not. And lots of good head-spin, clever, original ideas in Prey. So naturally, me being a big fan of all of that, I was heavily invested in the franchise and I was really looking forward to Prey 2. The trailers looked absolutely badass, free-roaming alien concrete jungle, playing as a bounty hunter with a plethora of tools to take down your targets. And for some reason, Bethesda canned it. And I quote, they said, "It wasn't up to our standards." Now I'm sure I've gone into this in one of my articles before or one of my videos in the past, but I can't make heads or tails of it. Anyways, now we have this new Prey. So naturally I'm going to be a little bit biased against it due to my love for the original franchise that got canned. So it would have to be pretty darn good, right, to get me to swing around, do a switcheroo here. Now the first thing, Prey does have some interesting concepts. It's got a very mysterious story from the outset. Well, I say from the outset, about 15 minutes into playing. We're messing around with questions like, are we in a time loop? Are we in a simulated reality? And it does have some original ideas of its own. I'm sure many of you have already seen the promotional bits and bobs out there going on about how you can morph into a cup and become a cup and roll around as a cup to get into small areas, little things like that. The demo actually lets us get our hands on something called the glue gun, which is a very original kind of gun, I guess. Just blobs of white glue that freezes your enemies in place, which then allows you to smash them to bits with your wrench. Sound familiar, anybody? There's lots of similarities to BioShock here, and I don't think that is any kind of mistake. I think Arcane is very aware, and I think they've sat down at some point and gone, hey, BioShock was very, very successful. It's been a while now. What can we take from that gamers love? What can we take from BioShock that gamers will feel kind of comfortable with in our game? Some people may have played the demo so far and gone, there's something about this that feels familiar, that feels nice and comforting. And I'll tell you what, it's that BioShock feel. The environments within the ship are all very Art Deco and shiny, brown offset by strips of gold, all of that kind of colour palette there. And not only that, but to level up, once again, we're sticking spiky things into ourselves. In the case of BioShock, it was these big fat syringes that you'd shove into your arms. In the case of the new Prey, it's, well, kind of a bigger syringe, if you like, that you stick into your eyeballs, and it uploads information and data there, which is a very similar method of learning new skills. Prey also has similarities to Deus Ex, but then I suppose you could say the same for Arcane's previous games, Dishonored 1 and Dishonored 2. This approach where you get rewarded for making use of initiative. There is no one way to do anything. You can go up, down, left or right, underneath or through. And Prey allows you to do that in its sandbox levels, which is great. However, it is not without its issues. There are a couple of bits and bobs here and there that leave me a little bit trepidatious prior to release. So let's take a look at these and see what I'm talking about here. First of which is the button input lag, most noticeable on the right stick when you go to move the camera around. The more attuned and ears to the ground type gamers out there will have noticed this. As soon as you start fiddling with the right stick to move your looking position around, there is a slight delay there. And while on the surface this may not seem like a very big issue, might seem like a little mini minor gripe, the problem that we have here is that with a button input lag like this, obviously it doubles up as an aiming function when you are trying to fight your foes, most of which are zippy, teleporting, spider-like creatures called mimics. And when you're trying to keep up with these, with the glue cannon, or the glue gun, as one of the two, it shoots glue anyway, which is the glue gun is very delayed. It's not like a bullet, a bang, bang, bang. You know, you're shooting out streams of blobular stuff. So when you're trying to keep up with these zippy spiders and you've got this button input lag, it does become a little bit of an issue. Bethesda has actually released a statement saying that they are indeed going to get it fixed by the time the game is released. And if it does, it'll give the game a whole other feel, because this difficulty with input lag, it affected a lot of the combat. A lot of the combat was very messy for me, and it just didn't really feel like I had as much control as I would have liked. And upon finding a pistol as well, I was a little bit surprised to learn that you can't look down the sights. They've stuck a silencer on it, so they're obviously encouraging tactics here and strategy. But you can't use the sights, which was a surprise to me, although I don't want to assume before the game is released. For all we know, you might be able to level up to use the sights, although that would be pretty dumb, but we don't know, do we yet? Another thing that I've picked up on, I might be wrong, but it certainly feels like Arcane Studios have developed this new Prey title for the PC first and for consoles second. What do I mean by that? Well, two things. First thing is, when you use computer screens within the game, think back to Doom 3, where your aiming reticule would turn into a mouse and you'd pan the camera around on the screen to select things within the screen and the user interface there. Now, that's all very well and good with a mouse. It works very well with a mouse, and I played Doom 3 on a mouse and keyboard back in the day, and it felt great. It's a mechanic that we don't see very often in sci-fi games. It's here again in Prey, and it just gives it gives the game world a little bit of extra real feeling. It gives a bit of added physicality to the world. But in the case of this kind of interface being applied to a joystick, things get a little bit sloppy. And things get a bit twitchy, playing games with your stick there to finally highlight the exact little bit on that screen that you're looking for. And the second thing then would be the CryEngine. I've come to the conclusion now that the CryEngine is best served on high-end PCs with big fancy pants graphics cards in them. Whenever we see the CryEngine come out on consoles, in the last generation, Crysis somehow found its way onto consoles, and in this generation, Crysis is powering the occasional game here and there, Robinson the Journey on VR, for example, and everybody's gone to the Rapture. And what I've noticed is that the CryEngine doesn't really cut the mustard on consoles, or I should say consoles don't cut the mustard for the CryEngine. I've come to expect jagged lines, a lack of anti-aliasing, snapping, popping textures, and soft textures in general, and very long load screens, and sadly all of those things apply to my experience of the Prey demo. The load screens are ridiculously long, so if you're dying over and over, things are going to get a little bit frustrating. Despite all of these things, there is still a very strong foundation here. Even though I have this preference for a Prey game that is no longer going to exist and probably never going to happen, I have to say this Prey sucks me in with its cool story. It's got a lot of mystery going on there. And there are a lot of concepts, like the types of weapons, the enemy types here, even though they run the risk of going a bit stale after a while. The Art Deco style that reminds me of Bioshock, I am a big fan of that, and they've gone for an interesting art style overall. So it is a curious game, and I think it is going to be a very good game. When it does come out, if I had to guess, it's going to be sitting comfortably around the 7s and the 8s. I don't think it's going to get a 10 out of 10, But there you go, we'll see when the game finally releases. If you've played the Prey demo and you disagree with anything that I say, or if you agree with anything I say, go right ahead and chuck me a comment below and I'll be sure to get straight back to you. If you enjoy the content or you just found me here on YouTube, then go ahead, click that subscribe button down there, and I'll see you all on the next video for all things PlayStation. Peace.